The response on Twitter after the Brussels terror attacks the 22nd of March was surprisingly muted. True, within minutes of logging on that morning, I was able to see multiple images of severely wounded people and watch videos of the panic and fear of the aftermath of the blast. Yet I noted with satisfaction there were probably twice as many tweets condemning the sharing of those images, and a widespread call across the Twitter sphere not to retweet them. Could it be, I wonder, that Twitter is growing up, that we're witnessing something rather unique, the spontaneous emergence of a moral sense? In the past, social media appeared to be primarily about sharing intimate images of violence for the good of the wider community, a kind of pity porn that reached both its nadir and its apex with the images of the drowned body of immigrant Aylan Kurdi. Although people expressed a moral sense of outrage as they passed the pity porn on, we all knew that titillation and novelty was as much part of the process as social conscience. Of course, that this appeared to change that March morning was perhaps simply that we have suffered too many attacks of late, shared a little bit too much. Maybe we'd also started to overcome that initial thrill of being broadcasters of snuff, because that is after all the technical term for such images of violence and death. Either way, what seemed certain was that a shift had occurred, a clicking point if you will. People had begun to realise that just because it exists, you don't need to look at it. My people, I exhorted online, you don't have to pass it on. The buck can really stop with you. And enough people take this stance. The virality of the image, the viral nature of the image, which is at epidemic proportion, can be vaccinated against and its spread halted. Tweeted out, I walked away from my laptop that day saddened, yet hopeful. About a week later, it transpired that some of the images broadcast after the Brussels bombings were fake. One particular video posted on YouTube appears to show CCTV footage of blurred figures fleeing Zaventem airport. What it actually depicts is an image of blurred figures fleeing a terror attack on Domodedovo airport, not so easy to say, and I'd certainly never heard of it before, in Russia in 2004. This is something that's been going on for a while apparently. Images shared after the Paris attacks were originally footage of the Charlie Hebdo killings. Vids of the Eagles of Death Metal playing at Bataclan on the night of the bombings were actually from a Dublin gig, and so on. Obviously, faking the news is as old as the news, but the rise of social media has dramatically increased the possibility that the imagery that accompanies our journalism is fraudulent. First, because people will publish anything to increase their click rate. A click or like is the crack cocaine of online addiction, proof that you count, that the world listens to you, that you are included in the endless conversation. Second, because now there is such an abundance of footage around, shot by amateurs mostly, that it makes it all the more difficult to determine authenticity. So the clips are fake, I counted. Does it actually matter? I revisited the images of the attacks, armed with the possibility that some or even all of them were not what they purported to be. I found that it didn't make any difference. The effect of the images was pretty universal. One airport looks like another, one wounded victim is as tragic as another, and in any case none of those images represented something new or unique to me, or indeed to any of you. Since the rise of the handheld devices and social media, we've flung open the casements of our consciousness to a steady stream of snuff, and these latest images were just a continuation of that mounting contamination. And yes, I do regard this imagery as snuff, because authentic images of violence and death are nothing other than that. So what if those terrified forms were Russian and not Belgian? They were still suffering, terrorism was still the scourge of our age, we should still bomb the shit out of ISIS. Still, the question over authenticity does give one pause for thought, and in that hiatus, that hesitation of consideration that social media botanism normally disavows, I asked myself, why do we even look at such material? I realised it's because we're now fascinated by, addicted to, our regular hit of snuff. Snuff has become as much a part of our social existence in the past decade as funny kittens and emojis. Indeed, we seem to have the same evanescent emotional response to each. If we're outraged by images of bleeding corpses, that indignation lasts about as long as the giggle we have over a child scooting around the kitchen on its potty. We like it, we share it, its affect dissipates soon after. A few days pass. We feel restless. What of significance have we shared of late? then something else appalling goes down, and we can get incandescent again at terrorism and feel the power of that hatred add a strata of depth to our commute or that tedious mid-morning health and safety session. The journalists who've reported the fake imagery naturally argue this erosion of authenticity is an attack on the reputation of the Fourth Estate. But sadly as ever, the mainstream media entirely missed the point of social media in a hopeless attempt to retain some relevancy for themselves, a foothold of safety in an avalanche of its own irrelevancy. Truth is, questions of authenticity no longer pertain to the world of snuff. In fact, one of the defining features of the genre is the viewer's titillation bred of their inability to differentiate real from fake. Part of us wants every snuff image to be fake. Let's call that the decent part. Just as part of us wills that every fake image be real. Let's call that the honest part. Put the two parts together, however, and you find that the whole creature doesn't much care either way, as long as they get their emotional kicks. Of course, debates over image authenticity go way back to Baudrillard's famous essay of 1981 on the simulacrum, and his infamous statement later that the Gulf War did not take place. The French philosopher's highly moralistic point was that the new media meant we'd lost sight entirely of the authentic, to the degree that we were no longer in touch with the real because of the dominance of the hyper-real. This was certainly a prophetic response to new technology, but looking back now, it seems a tad myopic. What Baudrillard could not have predicted is that we would live as we do now, surrounded by unquestionably authentic, powerfully violent imagery on an almost daily basis. From the ISIS decapitations through the images of Aylan Kurdi to this latest scandal from Brussels, the question is not, as Baudrillard would have it, that of the hyperreal, but rather of the omni-real. We do not have a problem with too great a distance between the real and its image, as he argues, but instead are grappling with the knottier difficulty of too great a quantity of imagery of violence of the real. Baudrillard's was a rather refined question of quality. How real is this image? Ours is a much more quotidian issue of quantity. How many images can we contend with, share, approve, and subsequently repel? I would go further. I always go too far. For my money, the significant disjunction of our times is not between simulation and reality, but rather between language and imagery. Time and again it can be recounted how horrendous was the treatment of prisoners in Abu Ghraib or the treatment of hostages in Raqqa, but we will only believe it when we see it. After the scandal of the ISIS decapitation videos 18 months ago, few had the inclination to observe that the videos were in reality rather fake. They don't show people being beheaded, they show people being threatened, then a cut, not a real one but an editorial one, then a body with a head resting on top. The fact that these images were fake didn't seem to trouble anyone and was barely commented on at the time. What was all important was that we had suspected ISIS to be beyond the pale, journalists had told us ISIS would be beyond the pale, but we still needed that visual confirmation. Thanks to ISIS, the digital caliphate, and the unwillingness of the social media behemoths to police their own content, visual confirmation in the form of snuff was what we got. As we currently stand, the global, daily accessibility of snuff is a new phenomenon. When 9/11 occurred, there was little or no handheld footage of the event. We just couldn't accept that now. No disaster can pass us by without our exercising our digital privilege to be there, first hand, front and centre. What is more, if you don't got the goodies in terms of pics and vids, then you're not going to be liked, shared and so on, and so it's as if whatever happened never happened. If 9/11 occurred now, Facebook, as you can imagine, would go into meltdown from all the sharing of first-hand footage. As it stands, however, maybe in less than a generation, it will be as if 9/11 never took place because, frankly, if we can't share it, then we just can't bear it. Less than a week after my prediction that our online selves were becoming socially responsible, my prophecy seemed even more irrelevant than Baudrillard's. Looking back, after 1 week looking back, I saw how ridiculous we'd all been. In resisting the urge to share, to show that we really care, we were actually debating whether or not we should transmit images that themselves were not the transmitted images of the event. While we fiddle about with our consciences, the aroma of snuff burned all around us, consuming our self-righteousness along with our grip on authenticity. I felt, I do mind telling you, a little foolish. The simple fact is, It doesn't matter to us if the images we share are real or fake. Indeed, it has never mattered very much whether snuff was real or fake. What matters is how it makes us feel, and, in sharing that experience, how it makes others feel, about themselves, yes, but first and foremost, how they feel about us. And so in our hunt for constant affirmation, we are become the new auteurs of snuff, avid purveyors of all kinds of violent filth, and like any low-level pornographer, we don't concern ourselves with the quality of the goods. We just attend to the number of bums squirming on seats and the rapture of those eyes affixed upon the obscenity of the screen. Here's my scoop! Baudrillard was wrong. The Gulf War did take place. There are no simulacra in the world of socially mediated snuff because authenticity does not belong with the quality of the image, but with the power of our investment in it. We are not victims of the hyper-real, but the hyper-feel. If we can see it, feel it, and share it, then whether the image is snuff or duff matters not. We don't care about what actually happened. We just want another excuse to pass the click pipe round and feel that warm glow of social relevancy soften the edges of our increasingly friable post-millennial existence. Thanks.